Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an absolute masterpiece. We're talking about the legendary 2011 action RPG Dark Souls. We're going to break this game down as a complete masterclass in world building, focusing specifically on its incredible mythos, its famously punishing mechanics, and the really fascinating legacy of its ancient dragons.
But right off the bat, I have a question for you. Why do we love a game that constantly, and I mean literally constantly, punishes us? Millions of players around the world have completely fallen in love with an experience that is famous for its brutal, absolutely unforgiving difficulty. So, what makes us willingly subject ourselves to a world where failure isn't just a possibility, it's practically a guarantee?
Well, to figure that out, we gotta look at the sheer cultural footprint this title left behind. It literally spawned an entirely new genre. Have you heard of the term Souls-like? It's now an official subgenre of action role-playing games, defined by exactly what Dark Souls perfected: super high levels of difficulty combined with deep environmental storytelling. It completely bucked the trend of those hand-holding, easy mode tutorials that were just everywhere in gaming at the time. All right, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The Dark Souls phenomenon. 2. Mechanics of the curse. 3. The Age of Ancients. 4. Fall of the Dragons. 5. The Dragon Descendants. And 6. A Lasting Gaming Legacy. Section 1. The Dark Souls phenomenon. When this game dropped in 2011, directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki over at From Software, it captured the world's attention with a very specific, overarching aesthetic. Miyazaki described his vision as having, and I quote, a certain kind of refinement, elegance, and dignity. But the brilliance is that beneath all that elegance lies a really profound sense of existential absurdity. Miyazaki took dark fantasy inspirations, like the manga series Berserk, and blended them perfectly with rich philosophical parallels. The world of Dark Souls echoes French existentialism and the works of philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche. It gives us a universe defined by a fading flame and a seemingly meaningless, cyclical reality. Section 2. Mechanics of the curse. So, how exactly does a game make you feel existential absurdity? Well, it bakes that philosophy right into the core gameplay loop. We're talking about the brutal cycle of the undead curse. You start at a bonfire, right? That's your only true safe haven. You venture out, you fight, and invariably, you die. And when you die, you lose all your accumulated experience points, which the game calls souls, along with your humanity. Then you're given exactly one chance to fight your way back to where you died to get them back. If you die again before you reach them, boom, gone forever. This constant looming threat of loss forces you to either persevere and adapt, or eventually lose your mind and give up. The game's lore actually has a term for giving up. It's called going hollow. It is just a perfect marriage of difficult mechanics and dark narrative. Section 3. The Age of Ancients. Now, you might know that Dark Souls uses a very famous minimalist style of storytelling. A lot of the history is completely implicit, just hidden away in item descriptions or the world design itself. To truly grasp this world, we actually need to zoom way, way back to the very beginning of its universe. The overarching history is broken into eras. First, we have the Age of Ancients, then comes the advent of fire, which sparks the Lord's War, and finally, that leads to the Age of Fire. That Age of Fire is actually where the game's main story takes place as the flame starts dying out. But right now, we're going to focus on that very first era. Picture this, a completely prehistoric world, just shrouded in endless fog, filled with gray crags and these massive towering arch trees. In this era, the world was ruled by the EverlastingDragons. And look, these weren't just big lizards. They were towering, half-elemental beings that existed before the concepts of life and death even applied to the universe. They possessed true immortality, all thanks to their impenetrable stone scales. They were essentially beings beyond human understanding. They didn't feel pain, they just existed in this endless gray twilight. Section 4. Fall of the Dragons. But hey, nothing lasts forever, right? That endless gray was completely shattered when these subterranean humanoids discovered the first flame. This flame introduced disparity to the world. Suddenly there was light and dark, life and death. And from within this flame, beings known as lords claimed incredible power. This finally gave them the means to rise up and challenge the immortal dragons. Now, the casualty rate was insane. For every dragon slain, the Knights of the Lords lost 60 of their own. But the Lords had devastating elemental magic on their side. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, found the dragons' one ultimate weakness. He used massive lightning bolts to literally peel apart their stone scales. The Witch of Izalith wove these great firestorms to burn down their archtree habitats. And Nito, he unleashed a suffocating miasma of death and disease.
But honestly, even with all that ridiculous firepower, the tide of the war only really turned because of an epic betrayal from the inside. Enter Seath the Scaleless. Seath was a dragon born deformed, entirely missing the stone scales that made his brethren immortal. Driven by absolute jealousy and this desperate desire for the immortality he didn't have, Seath sold out his own kind. He sided with the Lords and actually revealed the secret weakness of the stone scales to Gwyn's lightning. Because of that betrayal, the Lords won, and the everlasting dragons were driven to near extinction.
Section 5. The Dragon Descendants. So this huge triumph ushers in the Age of Fire. In the aftermath, true everlasting dragons became incredibly rare, leaving only their varied, lesser descendants scattered all throughout the world of Lordran. The original dragons were mineral-based, unfeeling, and completely immortal, but the introduction of life and fire totally corrupted their descendants. The lesser dragons you encounter in the game are mortal, fleshy, and deeply warped by emotions and desires. A perfect example of this is a boss called the Gaping Dragon. This thing retrogressed and mutated so heavily just trying to survive that it was warped entirely by the greedy desire to eat. It literally turned its entire upper torso into a massive, terrifying mouth. It perfectly illustrates how the introduction of life and desire completely corrupted the purity of that ancient world. The lore surrounding these dragons is so deep, it's actually spawned massive online communities that just work tirelessly to piece it all together. For instance, there was a Reddit lore theorist discussing the black dragon Calamite, who is a genuinely terrifying DLC boss, and they pointed out some striking similarities to the Norse myth of Fafnir. Both are black dragons deeply associated with a terrible curse and a ring that brings misfortune. It's just a brilliant example of how From Software weaves real-world mythology, like Greek and Norse legends, right into their cryptic, pieced-together storytelling.
Section 6. A Lasting Gaming Legacy.
So, what was the actual real-world impact of Dark Souls and its uncompromising design philosophy? Well, despite its ridiculously punishing reputation, the game was a massive commercial success. By April 2013, it had sold 2.37 million copies worldwide. And what's wild is that the PC port was initially, well, it was rough. Actually, over 93,000 fans signed a petition begging for a PC release, which prompted the publisher to rush out the Prepare to Die edition before it was truly optimized. But get this, the community loved the game so much, they literally built their own mods to fix the technical issues themselves. Now that is some true dedication.
And that commercial success, that was really just the tip of the iceberg. The industry impact was monumental. Dark Souls directly influenced massive heavy hitters across the entire gaming landscape. We are talking about blockbusters like Destiny, The Witcher 3, and God of War, all the way to beloved indie hits like Shovel Knight and Salt and Sanctuary. Game developers everywhere looked at this game and were totally inspired by its intricate, interconnected level design, its absolute refusal to hold the player's hand, and its highly challenging but rewarding combat philosophy.
And then, the ultimate crowning achievement. At the 2021 Golden Joystick Awards, Dark Souls was voted the ultimate game of all time. No big deal, right? Because of its uncompromising design and those deep philosophical themes we've been talking about, it is frequently cited not just as a great video game, but as an essential, foundational instance of video games as a legitimate art form.
I want to leave you with a final thought today. In a world where failure is a constant guarantee, is the true victory just refusing to go hollow? The sheer genius of Dark Souls is how the lore of the undead curse directly mirrors your real-world experience sitting there holding the controller. The game's gonna knock you down, again, and again, and again. But as long as you refuse to give up, as long as you keep that drive to try just one more time, you haven't truly lost. It's a profound existential lesson wrapped up in a masterfully crafted digital world. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and I highly encourage you to keep diving into the incredible lore that we've really only just scratched the surface of today.